Here's the question analysis of Unit 4 Practice Paper, Paper 1. We'll be looking at some challenging questions in Part A, and I'll be showing you how you can find the right answers for these questions. The first question we want to look at is Question 3. The question has 3 parts. Part 1 asks, how much can we see of the person making the coffee in the video? And Part 2 asks, what adjective is used to describe them? Here's the relevant passage. This passage mentions that only hands are seen, so the answer to Part 1 of the question is that we can only see the hands. We also see that these hands are described as giant-like in the same paragraph, which is the answer to Part 2 of the question. Part 3 of the question asks, why are they described like that? That being giant-like, as we have learnt from Part 2 of the question. If we take a look at the passage before and after paragraph 2, you'll notice that the subject being discussed is the series of videos called Miniature Space that features tiny food being cooked with tiny tools. The focus of this whole section is on how shockingly tiny the food and tools are. So we can infer that the writer described the hands as giant-like as a way to compare the size of the hands and the food. Now, let's look at another question. Question 18.1. What are miniatures, according to paragraph 8? Here's paragraph 8. One way to look at this question is to pay attention to the verbs to be, like the one circled here, meaning we are looking at sentences that talk about what miniatures are. Although all of these sentences talk about miniatures being something, they are not all the same. For example, these 2 highlighted in blue are descriptions of miniatures and would only be answers if the question asks you, what are miniatures like? And highlighted in green here are actually some examples of the miniatures. And the question would have been, what are some examples of miniatures? Lastly, highlighted in purple is a description of miniatures being a more perfect version of real life. This is neither a description nor an example of miniatures. This phrase describes the essence or meaning of miniatures, and is in fact the best answer to this question. Here's another question, question 19, which asks you to find a phrase in paragraph 8 that means, keeps their attention. Here's paragraph 8. If you scan the paragraph, you'll notice the word keeps, which matches the question. And the phrase that comes with this word is, keeps their eyes glued. Even if you don't know what this phrase means, you can guess that when someone has their eyes glued on something, it means they are looking at it and not something else. That means they have their attention focused on something. Therefore, keeps their eyes glued is the answer to this question. Now, it is your turn to try using these exam skills to answer some similar questions. Answer the questions below based on this text in your unit assessment.